It is a pleasure. Let me bring up my notes because I'm a professional, right? So
You are a professional.
I try to be. Pastor Donovan Price is an advocate, physical and spiritual supporter of gun violence victims, and is one of the strongest tools in the city of Chicago that cares for families that are affected by the nightly violence that is occurring here in the city. This year alone, we've already seen 500 Chicagoans who have been shot, with 98 of those victims being deceased, according to the popular violence tracker website Hey Jackass. Joining us on Weekend at Gabe's, Pastor Donovan Price. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you. And yourself?
Good. Thank you so much for giving some of your time. I know you're a very busy man, and I can only imagine that you're probably watching your phone right at this moment. So we definitely want to respect your time and your energy.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
I appreciate it. Let's get into to the beef of it. The city obviously had a very rough 2020. This year, like I mentioned, is off to some very startling numbers of gunshot victims. You yourself are out there nightly projecting it on your social media and being a present factor in some of these communities. What is your take of what's going on this year that you might have noticed that's taking place as far as what's going on in the streets?
Well, this year seems to be an elevation of last year. Last year was one of the worst year since 2016. A year when every month was the deadliest month um, since 2016. And so far, January was the deadliest month since 2016 as well. So 2021 is not looking very promising, but there's always hope, and I always try to keep hope. And of course, unfortunately, we've had a few children who have been hit as well.
Yeah, just this past weekend, you were outside the hospital of I believe it was an 11-year-old girl who was shot and who wasn't doing so great, who was in ICU, and you were out there spiritually praying and wishing sending positive energy to the girl and her family so that she pulls through. Well, what is that? I know I've recently seen an interview with WTZW, where you kind of talk about the stresses and a little bit some of your mental health with being in these circumstances and around these environments of trauma. What is that like? I know that probably feels good to bridge people together for an uplifting moment like that, but there has to be a lot of energy, that is taken from you to pull it together, show up, and have a good positive space for yourself as well.
Well, it definitely can be taxing at times. But I know that part of what I do is kind of pushing my emotions aside or almost scheduling them so that I can concentrate on helping the family, the mom, the people who are most directly affected by the tragic event at hand. I was recently told by a retired Army major that who was responsible for the psychological welfare of the troops in Afghanistan. I spoke, and then she spoke after me, and she told the professor at the university we spoke at that to make sure you tell Pastor Donovan that we had a team of 37 in Afghanistan to do what he does by himself.
Wow.
And that, though it was a great compliment, it's still, it kind of sometimes I have to be reminded of the weight of what I do. And I know it affects me, in terms of PTSD and anxiety and those type of things. But somebody has to get some scars in order for some other people to be healed. And so that is, so I take the things that are proudly that affect me.
Pastor, you talk about the weight of it, and it was so great to hear you say that, because reading the stories and getting familiar with who you are, that was the number one question on my mind. But in a lot of interviews, you say that the work that you do feels worth it. Speak to that and what makes it all worth it for you.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm blessed to help people and to serve people in the absolute worst situation they could possibly be in. I've been in just about every situation you could imagine. And when you when you realize that a mom comes back to you or a family comes back to you afterwards, or the children in that family start to react a certain way when they see you after a while, it becomes obvious that it's worth it when you see the proof that you actually helped somebody, even those that who have been shot and fortunately did not perish. Like some of the children I work with, 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and otherwise, and their parents talk about how I was standing at the hospital when they got there, or I was at the scene and then the hospital, and then one mother, I took her breakfast every morning to the hospital, and such. And so when you see that you're helping people and their lives are improved, despite the fact that they had such a tragic event, then it's worth it, and you move along. But whether I could physically see that it's worth it or not, I would still do what I do. But it is important to see that that you help someone.
I read or heard that you tried to be at the scene of an incident within 20 minutes of it occurring. I know that's your goal. How do you follow or track it? Is it a police scanner, a social media? How do you stay on top of like where the incidents are occurring, and how do you get there?
Right.
when
Right. Well, I definitely don't use the police scanner very much because it's annoying. Uh, and I can't really I can't understand what they're saying. They're all talking at once, and there's a million channels for each neighborhood. And so I used the social media Chicago Scanner, hashtag Chicago Scanner, Spot News, and those guys who are recognized as being the best in the country at what they do. And now I formed a relationship with Spot and the other ones. So there are times when he hits me directly on my phone. There are police commanders in some of the police districts. Unfortunately, now family members who know me from previous situations, press sometimes will hit me. There's a million different ways. But I'm kind of on call 24/7 and have been for the past 5 years.
Yeah, you mentioned that there's you referred to it as a grapevine, where it could be like the incident itself can then transition into a greater trauma or set off an occurrence of events that could also trigger some things that could happen. How do you how does your presence kind of prevent that, or at least contain that something like retaliation? I know you do violence prevention as well. So how do you get in there, or like when you arrive, like to take us into like example of when you arrive, like are you assessing, are you just trying to figure out like how you yourself could be put into a place that could be used to better the situation, even though there's just like probably imagine chaos is occurring. So how take us into that circumstance?
Well, in most cases, what I have to do when I first get there is find out where in the crime scene, the proximity of the crime scene, because sometimes you could be talking about 2 blocks long. I look for the portion of the crime scene that is most active. There are the most people, and as the crime scene progresses, I look for the worst of the worst. In other words, if I hear a scream, which I know certain screams, I know that mother screamed, or you can tell when a family member shows up at a homicide scene or whatever that case, and I go immediately to that person, immediately to wherever the worst portion of the worst, even if I have to, walk down a dark alley next to a homicide scene, which I do a lot, much to my relatives' chagrin, um, and try to find, the person who needs the most help. I'm there to help, and so I'm looking for the person who needs the most help, the correct individuals, the family members. There's a lot that I have to do. I'm there to do at a scene. And so I need to know who, where the detectives are, if the detectives are, where we're at in the scene. Is it, brand new? Am I the first person on the scene after the police and or ambulance, if there is an ambulance that's coming? If there are family members already there, or there was a scene I can remember specifically. I was in a cast actually at this scene, and it was raining,
Mm.
and I didn't have crutches or the boot. Uh, so it's in a soggy cast in the rain, but I did wait probably about an hour and 15 minutes before the first family member showed up. Um, but
Mm,
I just felt that somebody was going to come, and they did come. And that grapevine, there was a young lady apparently who above me in one of the buildings was on live filming the whole thing. And somebody saw her live, and they called the cousin, they called the thing, and then within, you know, I waited that hour and 15 minutes, and there was nobody there. But within a 20-minute period after that wait, there were, close to 20 relatives there. And
wow.
so it sometimes it takes patience. You have to feel. I've been doing it for 5 years, so I know a little bit about the logistics. I actually formulated a college curriculum around the logistics of crime scenes to teach to clinical trauma students and professors. And so there's a lot to learn, and a lot to do. And so I just assess the scene, constantly assess the scene. I don't it's not I don't consider it dangerous. um,
Mm,
Simply because, number one, you have to think you're talking about a place where there are thousands of police. And so that's generally not a dangerous place in and of itself. Now, fights, and there are some things that break out at scenes, and it can be quite a tense situation. But generally speaking, it's not dangerous in terms of that. I've had a gun pulled on me a couple of times, but it's not something I worry about. You know,
mm.
and so I'm there to serve. I'm there to do what I do, and I'm going to fulfill the mission regardless.
You you mentioned that yeah, you mentioned you've been doing this for 5 years. What drove you to do this work? Because are you like specially trained in mental
Yeah,
trauma,
especially.
or like what would like jump out of like into this sort of Superman space?
Right.
Because there's just so it's not so much that you're just there, but there's a lot of work and dissecting and evaluating what is happening. So now that you're 5 years in, I'm pretty sure like you have hours of experience. But like taking it to like that first year, you decided to like I'm gonna start doing this. This is needed in my community.
Right. Well, I always tell people God snuck it in a little bit at a time, because if He put the entire want ad in, it might not have worked out that way. But I started. I was working with a prayer organization, and at that time it was 2016, so the shooting had started being pretty bad that summer, and then the
Yeah.
Chicago police asked me to be their prayer and kind of a speaker at events they did as a result of a certain level of shootings, mass shootings, or a child, and that put me in the same proximity where I started to meet victims. And so once I started to meet the victims, and then I saw one of the police officers that I work with on TV trying to hold back this grandmother whose two or three grandsons were dead at the scene. And I thought to myself,
Wow.
he's a nice guy, but that seems a bit much for a policeman, a kind of gung ho policeman to do his thing. And then God said, yeah, I wish I could find somebody to do that. And I think somebody stuck me in the butt with a pin, and I stepped forward, and God said, "Okay, good, we got you, Pastor." And so it's just I just kind of started to do it and learn and grow and learn and learn and learn and learn. And every time I think that I've seen it all, then something happens, like recently, that lets me know that I haven't seen it all.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
recently was literally following behind the guy. You remember the shooting spree a few weeks, about a
Oh
month or
God.
so ago? Um,
Yeah.
I was actually
Yeah.
right behind him because I thought I
Wow.
was responding to separate homicides because I didn't have a scanner. And so I didn't hear that the police had already kind of noticed that it had to be one person doing all of this. But I went from one to the other, And had I not stopped at the third shooting, which was a 15-year-old girl at a gas station, and her mom was there, and so it got a little chaotic at that scene. But at that time, the shooter actually doubled back to the shooting that was before then and shot more people. And had I continued at the rate I had gone from one shooting to the other, I would have been at that shooting, and who knows what would have happened. But the fact that this mom was here and I had to, really help out there, and so I just remember thinking that night that just when just when you think have seen it all, then something happens and you have no way to know. But I am glad that I was there to help some of the people along the way.
So when I hear people talk about violence in the city, a word that comes up a lot is desensitization. They feel like the communities are desensitized. They feel like the citizens are desensitized. And I like what you said about, every time I feel like I've seen it all, something comes out of left field, So I guess my question is, how do you fight the desensitization on your end? Because obviously you're interacting with all these things. And how can we as a community fight the desensitization to find some sort of solution, some sort of way forward here?
Well, for myself, one thing I do is I immerse myself. I do the exact opposite of desensitization. When I hold that mother at that scene where her child is dead, I actually draw grief. I would use the term grief sponge, so to speak. I allow myself to open up more than probably is healthy to do, to really put myself, because I have about 3 minutes to become a family member, a trusted family member. And so I really open myself up emotionally and love on these people who are in this situation. And the desensitization of the city and some of the community is part desensitization and part denial. We still hear that, I kind of laugh in my spirit when I see now on TV that I never would have thought it could happen here. We moved here so it wouldn't happen. It's usually a quiet neighborhood. By now, it's obvious that there is no place that it can't happen. I would think that Gaga's dog walker would be just about as far as the violence could go on this planet. But obviously, no, even Gaga's dog walker isn't safe. And so, I mean, in another sense, there's no place safe. And so I don't think that people will really get it until it happens on their doorstep. And until people really get it, whether it be Christians or the church folks or whatever, until people really get it, then it can't be solved. And I to this day, I was talking to somebody earlier today, I don't believe that the problem of violence has begun to be addressed. So as far as looking for the solution, we're nowhere near there because nobody's addressing it.
Right.
It's a lot of reactive, not being proactive.
And I mean, Chicago's a city that everything can be politicized or monetized, and the tears of these mothers has fallen into that category as well.
How has your faith been challenged by your experience being an advocate and being on the front lines of these terrible moments? How do you keep your faith strong in humanity, society? What are some of those challenges that you may have with your spirituality?
Well, I've never had the slightest problem with my faith as a result of this. If anything, it's stronger because I personally have to stay, on the God hotline in order to survive. And so, I've seen God in these situations, and in the bad situations, we forget God. We kind of want God to be Santa Claus. And when you get a lump of coal in your stocking, then all of a sudden now you're an atheist. And so, That's the way it is. That's society. That's man. That's the way humans are. We're fair weather friends, even with God. And so for me, it hasn't. I work side by side with God, so I see Him every day. I talk to Him all the time. I have to, and so even in terrible, terrible, heart wrenching situations, I can still see God, and I have to see Him. I'm in the midst of probably one of the saddest situations ever right now with the 11-year-old. With her being in a near vegetative state. For a week and a half going on, and it's heart wrenching. And I was there that night with the family. The first night I was on, I know, TV and such outside the hospital on Saturday, but I was there with them that first night when I was actually standing outside the emergency room door when they got there. And I remember praying that night with them, and the mom fainted halfway through the prayer. Just on the concrete outside of the hospital and such. But I walk with them all the way, and I'll walk with them forever. They can call me 3 years from now and say they need groceries, or can you pray for me, or whatever the case may be, and I'm going to be there for them. And so my faith is, if anything, has been strengthened because, number one, it has to be strong because I have to pass it on.
Pastor, what you talk about being on God's hotline. This is going to sound like a goofy question, but I promise you it's coming from a good place. Does God have hold music?
Well, He does. He does have hold music, but it's one of those kind of infomercial type of things.
Yep.
And so it's got there is can help, and believe it or not, you do have to press 2 if you speak Spanish. And that, but it's no, God has hold music, but it's informational. So you may not even really need to talk to Him. You can get the information off of there, or go to the website. The app.
Yeah.
The app is about 600 pages long, but that's the way it goes.
Before we let you go, Pastor Donovan, how can we help support your efforts? Is there a donation? Are you taking donations, physical or monetary? Like how can people better support the work that you're doing?
Well, my website is www.solutionsandresources.org, and it has a portal for financial. It has a portal for volunteer. It tells a lot about we're working on it now to even upgrade it because I want personal stories on there as well now in 2021. And so, but solutionsandresources.org, or of course on Twitter or Facebook. I'm very active on Facebook. I'm kind of docile. I kind of say where I'm going and that, but on Twitter, I'm a little more detailed and really personal on Twitter.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll definitely check it out and definitely get the word out of the work that you're doing. We thank you so much for taking time to share your story tonight and your journey. We appreciate it. We hope to have you back in the future.
For sure. Thank you all. And don't be a stranger.
God bless you.
I will not.
All right. God bless.
Pastor Donovan Price joining us here on Weekend at Gabe's. Have a good night. We are going to keep things moving. We have Cheryl Ray Stout and she's on deck with us, but we're quick 2-minute debrief. I think it was just one of those just an amazing story and amazing work that Pastor Donovan's doing. It's almost movie-like in a sense that he's taken on this challenge and traveled this path just because he felt the touch of God encouraging him to do it. And his impact is so great, and you can already tell by hearing him say, like, the communities, law enforcement, people recognize that when he steps into the scene that that's a point in a positive direction. And it's there's only so few people are chosen to do that work, and he's one.
I think we could all do well to heed God's safety pin, as he so put it. God's safety pin poking you in the butt you know, you got to listen to that. Sometimes people don't step forward. But shout out Pastor Donovan, man. He's out here doing the Lord's work, and it's a testament to his heart as well as his faith.